Welcome to the series Person of Interest, brought to you by the Australian Investigation Agency, fighting for truth, accountability and justice. My name is John Armfield. Welcome to episode 7, The Commanding Officer Who Closed the Door, part 2 of a 3-part special. In part 1, you saw how a commanding officer shaped the narrative, withheld evidence and referred me to the Joint Military Police Unit after I reported a data breach on the advice of an ADF lawyer and a data breach that I did not cause. Today is part 2. This is where the story changes, because once the Navy realised the truth was coming out, the system moved, not to protect me, but to protect itself. Section 1, when the evidence became undeniable. By early 2022, the evidence was no longer disputed. It showed failures in suicide risk management, ignored welfare directives, a false Defence Force recruiting timeline, privacy breaches, freedom of information irregularities, and contradictory senior officer accounts. Every one of these issues was identified and documented by myself. So what happened next matters. There was no investigation into the evidence I provided. Instead, Commander Fiona Southwood initiates a fact find. Not into the failures, but into me. That fact find concluded I accessed defence objective without authority. In September 2022, Southwood reported me to the Joint Military Police Unit. But on the 14th of December 22, Joint Military Police Unit confirmed in writing that the investigation was concluded, that the findings were sent to Commanding Officer HMAS Morton, Commander Fiona Southwood. These findings were sent for deliberation, but 9 months after Commander Southwood received the findings, and 11 months after Southwood referred me to Joint Military Police Unit, it was left to Inspector General ADF on the 4th of August 2023 to advise I was not being charged. Not the chain of command that received the findings and could have delivered them 9 months earlier in December. I went into Christmas with my family in a highly stressed and anxious state, unknowing whether the military police or AFP were going to arrest me. Pause on that for a minute, because this matters. Why was I led to believe I could be arrested and prosecuted? Section 2, Legal Advice vs. Command Action. On the 24th of November 2022, an ADF lawyer formally advised me, if you have no confidence that the redress of grievance process will achieve anything, because your commanding officer caused you to be the subject of a Joint Military Police Unit investigation, the same advice recommended a complaint to the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner, reporting breaches of Australian privacy principles, specifically 11, and raised concerns that I, the complainant, the whistleblower, raise a complaint why I am being threatened with criminal prosecution when myself and my family are the victims here. So pause again. A defence lawyer, also a civilian barrister, identifies systemic failure. The legal expert identified my chain of command's fact find had me facing criminal prosecution, and myself and my family are the victims. Yet a Navy logistics officer, Commanding Officer HMAS Morton, acted in the opposite direction. Southwood ignored my allegations and evidence where I raised fraudulent behaviour 4 times, false information 3 times, breaches of legislation 5 times, and the privacy breaches twice, all in the one record of conversation on the 21st September 2022. That record of conversation forced Southwood to conduct her own fact find, but does not report my stated allegations, but she reports me, therefore ensuring the whistleblower's allegations and evidence are not investigated. Dismissing a qualified ADF lawyer's advice that there being breaches of the Australian privacy principles. Southwood was also responsible to provide me the outcome from the Joint Military Police Unit investigation that she initiated. The evidence is provided on the screen. Fiona failed to do so, severely impacting my health and my family. This is not a failure. This is intentional malice. As the Royal Commission stated, in the pursuit of truth, accountability and justice, Petty Officer John Armfield has been intentionally and maliciously stonewalled, leading to an impact on his mental health and therefore loss of his career. These contradictions alone demand scrutiny. Section 3, the Royal Commissioner Intervention. In February 2022, I met Royal Commissioner Nick Caldis. He reviewed my evidence, the suicide inquiry, the welfare failures, the timeline, the freedom of information contradictions, and the organisational emails. And he advised me directly, make a formal maladministration complaint against Defence Force recruiting. That mattered because it came from a Royal Commissioner and it identified structural failure, not personal grievance. At that moment, this was no longer internal. It became reputational. Section 4, the response to maladministration. That complaint, advised by the Royal Commissioner, was responded by then Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Freeman. His written response stated, none of the allegations of Petty Officer John Armfield can be substantiated. Petty Officer Armfield may have been unsuitable for Defence Force recruiting posting, primarily because my mental health history was unknown to Navy and Defence Force recruiting. Every one of those claims can be contradicted by evidence. I believe those findings would be different if the fact-find officer was actually qualified. Inspector General ADF later found the fact-find was materially flawed. The complainant, being me, was never interviewed. The officer exceeded the terms of reference referring to my mental health. And an IJADF investigation in 2022 identifies that the service record of Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Freeman highlights the officer was not qualified to conduct the investigation or fact find. IJADF further stated it could be reasonable give rise to an apprehension of bias. Yet Matthew Freeman has been promoted to Colonel and this year commences a posting to Vanuatu. So listen carefully. Commander Fiona Southwood initiated the process of the fact find. Commander Southwood notified the subject of the complaint without ever asking me about the maladministration. She presented the response from an unqualified fact find investigator, Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Freeman, and Commander Fiona Southwood closed the matter, all without clarifying my complaint with me or her responses that she provided with the Navy. That's not conforming with the complaint's handling principles. That's not adherence to administrative policy. And that is definitely not procedural fairness. Section 5, the warning, the carrot and the stick. In early 2022, a former one-star officer warned me, John, if you continue, Defence will offer you carrots, i.e. incentives, but if that fails, they will destroy you. At the time, I didn't fully believe or grasp the comprehension of these words. What followed, though, matched that warning exactly. Section 6, the carrot, promotion in San Diego. On the 31st of May 2022, the final day for promotion submissions, the Petty Officer Member Statement, Navy Career Management Agency calls me. At that time, I was medically downgraded, working 2 half days a week. I was in psychological distress, and yet I was offered help rewriting my member statement, any posting of my choosing, including, as you can see on the screen, Mine Hunter Coastal, Clearance Diving Team 1, Clearance Diving Team 4, or the Mine Clearance Diving Task Group. But it got better. I was asked if I was interested in the San Diego Exchange, a role normally reserved for a Chief Petty Officer. When I questioned it, I was told, "John, read between the lines." That night, my wife asked me one question: "Can you sell your soul?" I said no. The incentives immediately stopped. The retaliation began. The 1 star, his words, they were on the money. Section 7, the status advice note contradiction. In August 2022, in response to my member statement, I received my status advice note. It rated me outstanding reporting history, outstanding defence values, outstanding potential, outstanding breadth of experience. I received 4 1s and 2 2s, and you're graded from 1 being the highest to 5. I received one of the strongest status advice notes in my career. That was possible. But 6 weeks later, Commander Fiona Southwood wrote her workplace capacity report, and she stated, in order to deal with his medical issues, the member has submitted a detailed complaint through his chain of command and has received a Navy response. This response was not to his satisfaction. Whilst I appreciate the member's contribution to defence and his prolonged high performance and dedication to service as a clearance diver, at this time and considering all of the information I am privy to, I do not support the ongoing retention. Firstly, Captain Ian Andrews and the Chief of Navy both told me face to face that Southwood's actions and response were not on behalf of the Navy, and that Freeman's response to maladministration was never approved and that they did not condone or support those responses. Secondly, Southwood states I provided prolonged high performance and dedication, but she does not support ongoing retention. I find that very contradicting and I find that very confusing. Finally, in comparison to the status advice note 6 weeks prior, we now have 2 official records. We have the same sailor. We have opposite conclusions. This cannot be a contradiction. This is not incidental. This requires further investigation. Section 8, the causation in writing. On the 23rd of November 2022, the same day I received my medical employment classification J52 decision, Captain Ian Andrews emails Commodore Van Stralen, and she writes, he is seeking information on his brother's death by suicide, which has culminated in him being given a medical classification J52. This is causation. This is in writing. My pursuit of truth resulted in my discharge. Captain Andrews also lists that I will receive 3 blows delivered the same day: my medical discharge, the response from Lieutenant Colonel Freeman, and unresolved IGADF issues. But the MEC Review Board warns, consider the impact on the well-being, ensure welfare supports are in place. But instead, Commander Fiona Southwood delivers all 3 at once. Section 9, the psychological impact. My psychiatrist later diagnosed major depressive disorder, severe anxious distress. I believe this is understandable when awaiting arrest and prosecution as a whistleblower for 9 months post the investigation concluding. Both conditions have been accepted by Department of Veterans Affairs, but I've never requested compensation for these injuries. I believe, why should compensation be funded by the Australian taxpayer when my evidence highlights the failures of 3 commissioned officers? The impact caused by unresolved legal conflict, false narratives, institutional abandonment. This was foreseeable. This was warned about. This was preventable. And all should have been resolved within 6 months, not 2 years, as advised by the ADF legal and medical experts on the 5th of May 2023.
It's 2 years I've waited.
I know.
In the back of my head, I've got.
I read this and I was like, I don't understand why this has taken 2 years. I do understand that there's like a billion email chains about we need to find these, we need to actually make sure there was an investigation. That took a bit of time to do that. So let's say 6 months to do that, because some of these reports, which were medical in confidence, weren't in medical files or in different places, but they found it eventually. So I'll give them 6 months. I won't give them 2 years.
Section 10, conclusion, the systemic failure. This pattern is now clear. Motive, protect defence from scrutiny.
This is why you have insurance, so that lawyers can take you through the legal minefield of what's going on. This is a legal minefield, right? And this whole case is a legal minefield. Two different agencies, they're responsible. It's a total legal nightmare, which is why we have the lawyers to help us.
Yeah.
Opportunity, my medical vulnerability.
I'm acknowledging those errors have led to a deterioration of your health and probably led to the situation where your service in the ADF is probably not good for you at the moment. That may change in the future, it may not change in the future, I don't know, but I'm sorry it's led to that. If these 100%, if these circumstances didn't occur, we'd be in a different situation.
Method, flawed investigations and withheld evidence. The investigators weren't qualified. Impact, my career destroyed.
Today is to try and say, hey, look, ADF did wrong by you. ADF's still doing wrong by you. Let's stop all of this.
Well, it's only 2 years ago, though, that I think John's flipped open the page of the report and found out what defence really thinks of him.
Yeah.
Right? And I haven't known it for 10 years, right? They've been thinking this of me for 10 years. I didn't try.
I want to see it from medical. I know I can. You did everything you could.
The cover-up, the freedom of information obstructions. Thanks to the officers who supported me in getting the truth. Otherwise, an enlisted sailor cannot find the evidence. Systemic failure. Every safeguard collapsed. Their own words confirm causation.
Officially, I'm sorry this has happened to you. There's been a number of errors and they keep occurring. I'm sorry that's happened.
This was not accidental. It was structural. It was planned. So, Australia, you've now seen my truth. Has my investigation impartially identified leadership failures, system failures, or both? The evidence proves the entire senior leadership of the ADF were aware of the entirety of this situation. Both Captain Andrews and Chief of Navy stated the Navy did not endorse Southwood's response. Both stated the ADF did not accept Freeman's response. But why was no action taken? Why was no support provided? Finally, did Southwood and Freeman act independently, or were they following orders? In part 3, we show how the system doubled down, how oversight bodies such as Inspector General ADF were misled, and how freedom of information became a weapon, and how the evidence keeps surfacing, despite the ADF's every attempt to bury it. Thank you, Australia. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your support.